Hello, welcome to Lazada Insider, featuring knowledge that makes a difference. We share trusted insights, forward looking perspectives, and exclusive expert interviews to keep you ahead of the curve.
Hi, I'm your host, Katrina, and welcome to Lazada Insider Consumer Insights series. Let me probably set the context for today by sharing a couple of interesting findings from research. First is that in e-commerce, revenue per session of loyal customers is 6 times that of a new shopper. However, the second statistics actually tell us that at the same time, more than half of the Southeast Asia online consumers switch brands in the past 3 months. So I think when we actually put these two data points together, the challenge is actually quite clear. Customer loyalty has a very powerful impact on business growth in online space, but it also becomes much easier for consumers to access more information and purchase options. And as a result, customer loyalty has also become increasingly fragile. Our guest today will shed some light on how to win the loyalty of customers online using a data driven approach. Joining me today is Tyler from Brandwatch, and he has great expertise in social listening and digital consumer intelligence. Tyler is a firm believer of data driven insights and has numerous experiences working across countries and industries. Hello, Tyler. It's great to have you on Lazada Insider.
Hi, Katrina. Nice to meet you. How are you doing?
First, maybe you can let our audience know a little bit more about you, maybe what Brandwatch does and your role in Brandwatch.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. My name is Tyler. I'm an account executive from Brandwatch. So, what Brandwatch does is to provide companies with data and insights from all the unprompted conversations that's out there on the web. My role then is to help the companies grow and see the value using these insights.
Yeah, great. Sounds interesting. Let's dive into today's topic, customer loyalty. So before we talk about, the how to and the data driven method, what is customer loyalty exactly, especially in the online space, and why is it important?
So, good question. I think most people will think loyalty as like repeated purchases, but loyalty can also be non-profit driven engagements as well. So, think of customer loyalty like an ongoing relationship between the customer and the brand, and it looks at how willing the customer is willing to engage with the brand. So, in terms of online space, so not only how many times that they order, but perhaps also the number of times they visit your website and browse your products, whether they open your emails, whether they follow your account. And I think all of that is important because not only does it ultimately drive profit, but because traditionally in research, it's also cheaper to keep a customer than to acquire a new one.
Yeah, I love how you viewed loyalty not just as a customer coming back again and again for repurchase, but also really that connection with brands when they actually engage with the business times after times and trust the product and brand. Now we know that loyal customers are important, right? It can really help business a lot. Like what you mentioned, it's much easier. For businesses to actually get a loyal customers to buy versus acquire a new customer. But as I mentioned in intro, consumers are also becoming more open to exploring new brands, and loyalty in a sense, right, is really hard one. So what really drives consumers to become loyal to a brand?
Cool. So I think like it really, I mean, the market space is huge, right? So it really depends on the industry and the product as well. So for example, when it comes to food, taste is obviously a factor, and also what your company actually represents when it comes to things like eating sustainably or eating healthy could also be a factor. For clothing brands, it could be the price, it could be the identity in which the customer identifies with. But overall, it's the sum of all of the different experiences that the consumer have when they engage with your brand.
Hmm. Are there any differences that you would say in the online versus offline retail space?
Yeah, definitely. I think the difference between online and offline, it's the amount of touch points that you can impact this experience, right? So obviously for brands where the touch points and the experiences are more sensorial, having that offline in-person experience and customer service, smelling the product or tasting that product helps. But obviously, when it comes to online, you are able to promote on more touch points, right? Like what your brand stands for, come out with content based on popular memes and content to help engage your customers. You could also provide a great UI, UX website experience, or even just promote yourself in terms of having great customer service, post sales, or even pre sales as well. So I think the difference is really like the amount of touch points that you can impact the customer along the customer journey.
And I think one of the prominent trend that we observe, and I think the industry has observed, is also the line actually between online and offline retail is blurring. And consumers are also demanding for more of a unified, seamless experience as well. I guess what you mentioned in terms of the touch points in the online and offline space, once those integrated together, that's the most important thing for consumers to actually feel, the content that the brand provided are relevant and they feel like real engagement with the brand. Yeah, maybe let's zoom into the online retail space a little bit more and talking about building loyalty in the digital environment. And you are an expert in using a data-driven approach. So let's use that. So driving loyalty actually starts with deeply caring about customers' needs. So what kind of data do you think business should have in order to understand their customers better?
So I think having both internal data and external data, it's good to understand how you can improve upon loyalty. And all of these internal and external data basically forms like systems and tools to put in place so then you can measure these loyalty metrics. And all of these metrics are essential for businesses. So, for example, Brandwatch, we collect all of these unprompted conversations. So brands can use that as an avenue to understand what people are saying about the brand or the space that the brand operates in.
Hmm. And beyond understanding consumers, what are some of the other useful online data points and informations business need to pay attention to in order to drive loyalty?
Yeah, so I think relating to like the last question, let's talk about internal data. So internal data, it's I guess slightly more obvious because things like NPS scores, right, Net Promoter Score, it helps you to gauge quantitatively how your brand is being perceived, and also data points that you have like survey and feedback. It gives you really important qualitative data as to how your brand can improve or should maintain doing. Alternatively, when it comes to external data, so market research data about like how changing consumer spending patterns are or how attitudes are shifting in different industries, all of these can basically play a big part in how you can communicate or pivot your business in order to establish meaningful relationships with customer. So for example, like at the very start of this particular session, you've actually quoted a few market research statistics. Those statistics are really helpful in helping brands understand that, okay, customer loyalty is something that we should pay attention to. And we should start like, pivoting and changing our approach in terms of servicing our customers. Without that knowledge, brands would kind of be in the dark and just be on status quo and having the market take over their share of voice and so on.
I think for companies, especially now under COVID, right? Every company has a little bit of limited resource situation. So you mentioned a lot of great data. You mentioned about internal data like NPS and surveys. You mentioned about external data like market research, right? So if let's say a brand has limited budget on this, where do you think they should prioritize on?
Yeah, so I think like obviously the more data, the better it is for the brand, right? Because there's a whole 360-degree view of where your customers are what they're doing, the metrics that they have. But given like, sometimes we understand that customers have limited resources, right? So just investing in one or two metrics which you think can help you to identify customer loyalty would be good, right? So For example, some CRM tools to look at purchase history and purchase volume for a unique customer. You could maybe just look at your ads click-through rates. You could maybe just only invest in website analytics to see maybe how long your customers spend on your website and what they click, and do they add things to the cart and so on. So all of these like data is important, but perhaps if let's just say resources are limited, focus on one and maybe use that as like your guide in terms of understanding how loyal your customers are.
I'm also a firm believer of things you measure tend to improve. And, in today's context, right, you really cannot measure the effectiveness of your efforts and programs. Then you probably won't be able to know what you should work on to further improve to drive the loyalty. So how can business know whether the loyalty efforts are working, and how to use data to measure them?
Yeah, so I guess quite similar to like the previous answer, right? So once you kind of know that this is the metric that you want to kind of improve upon, use that as like the guiding path towards understanding customer loyalty. So let's just take, for example, social media analytics, right? Where we look at engagement metrics for your channel. Now today you can have, let's just say, 1,000 kind of, followers. Your click-through rates or like your amount of likes to follower ratio can be this particular much, right? So using that as like benchmark, perhaps over like the next few months, try to improve on like how you are targeting your customers, how you are putting out content, how you are engaging them post service as well, and you can then use that very same metric to then say that, hey, my likes to follower ratio or my click-through rates or like the amount of people the amount of time people kind of spend and looking at my Insta stories have kind of improved as compared to like the previous time. That's where whereby you can just use one metric to or few some metrics just to see that your loyalty efforts are kind of working.
Interesting. Are there any guidelines that business can find out in terms of, what kind of metrics they probably should look at first, that is most important for loyalty?
Yeah, so I think like in terms of um it depends on the brand as well, right? So I think in
Mm,
terms of if the brand is doing a lot of online sales through its website, you want to kind of maybe invest in like a website analytics because that's where most of your activities are, right?
mm,
Let's just say your brand, it's your strategy is looking at using influencers, right, to promote your brand. You might want to look at follower count. You might want to kind of look at how many times your picture has been saved or your Instagram shop has been clicked on the Instagram native ad. So really depends on like the strategy. I think most
mm.
important thing is to remember what your core business is and what your strategy is. That would then guide what data points you can use to measure customer loyalty.
Excellent sharing. I think we have discussed a lot from a business perspective, and we always say that we should put ourselves in the shoes of customers. So I'm curious to know, are there any loyalty methods or program that business use that work personally on you?
So good question. So I'm quite a routine person, so I don't really vary in my purchases that often. So when I want to buy stuff, I already know that I'm going to do that. So I generally don't respond well to push email campaigns or promotional emails. I don't exactly find them annoying. I'm just like quite ambivalent about them as I know I'm receiving them because I've interacted or purchased with them before. But what does actually work on me is that when I do come back to those particular websites, if there's some sort of customization, such as like remembering my last order or giving me recommendations based off my past searches as well, that's something that I appreciate because I know that you know, I feel like I'm being heard. I feel like they know me. So those are the kind of strategies that will kind of work on me that gets me more loyal with brand.
Mm,
Yeah, I think ultimately, if I were to kind of summarize, loyalty is based off like positive experience. And for me, that positive experience comes to like customization. It might be something that's really different from you, from another person. Some people like to be receiving SMSs and emails. That's the positive experience for them. Ultimately, there's lots of different ways to kind of, look at customer loyalty. We just have to kind of pick like the right one that works for us, and then use that like a way to measure that.
Hmm. Yeah, I really like how you summarize it, right? And I think what you mentioned are very interesting about positive experience. I think for brand and businesses, one important task to do is to really understand what that positive experience mean to different segments of consumers and tailor their solutions to their target consumers. And that's the way to create that positive experience and set your metrics and then measure against it and continuously improve on it. Really great sharing, Tyler. I'm sure our audience will definitely appreciate your great insights and advice here. And I especially like you mentioned about loyalty is about engagement. It's not only about just repeating purchase, right? In the e-commerce space, in the marketplace, for example, like Lazada, right? Customers going to watch your live shows, right? Live stream shows, right? That is important interactions, and they ask you questions. That's important interactions. Always treat every opportunity that you interact with customers as a potential opportunity to impress them. I think that's the very important takeaway for our brands here. Yeah, so I think really great sharing here. Thanks a lot for your time. And it's really great discussing with you on this topic.
Cool. Thank you for having me, and I hope everyone appreciated some of these shares.
This is Lazada Insider. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you click follow and subscribe so you don't miss our latest insights and expert interviews. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Lazada.